Torah, Vayeshev Chanukah, page 58. First column, second paragraph. Okay. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 lines in the end of the paragraph that begins Vihine. The Alter Rebbe is explaining that after the halah of Mamata L'mayla, which is Daved of Tefillah, Daved of Karbonis, then you come to the revelation of Elokus coming down, which is the level of Ner Mitzvah V'Torah Or, the level of Or that comes all the way down, okay? And then he says, that's why you light the kindle, the menorah, is to bring down that level of Elokus M'mayla L'mata. And then he says, and then you come to the level B'chol Me'idecha, which is the level of all your money, which is the level of tzedakah, which is the basis of all mitzvahs. So he says, Kaneid, as it's known, Shemitzvahs Hein B'asiyah Gashmis. The mitzvahs which are in physical objects, in Bechinas K'teiras, Hanasim Yitzam Mamonim, Shein B'atam, Ve'min Meichel. Now he comes to the third level. So you have Daved of Tefillah, which is Mamata L'mayla. Then you have Daved of Torah, M'mayla L'mata, and then you have the level of tzedakah, mitzvahs. Now he says mitzvahs is the level of the keteiros, the incense. While he mentioned before, the keteiros is from inanimate spices. There's no taste, it doesn't have a taste. It's not a food. And he says that's the level of mitzvahs. And that's the level of the reach, the smell that goes above. To strengthen the brain. To return the nefesh. Like we know when somebody faints, you give it spices to smell. The general beginning, where does the nefesh reveal itself in the body, is b'meichen sheberosh. The effect of smell is what is the concept of keteiros? That the nefesh shouldn't leave the body. It should always be in the body. It should be we come back and reveal itself in the concealed level, meaning the neshama within us is hidden. You have to reveal the neshama within us, right? That's what you need to do. And therefore, like the Rebbe said, no Jew is ever far, because every Jew has a neshama. You just have to reveal it. But it's there, it's close. You just have to reveal it. Mitzvahs, and generally speaking, is the mitzvah of tzedakah, shaleh nema, that concerning tzedakah says, u'tzedakah t'reimim goy. Tzedakah elevates a nation, meaning, shemisreimim is goes to the highest of levels, because that's Gemilas Chasadim, which is the middle level, right, which actually goes all the way up to the top. And that's what it says. He puts on tzedakah like armor. Tzedakah is like unto armor, the pasuk says, and the head of salvation, the hat of salvation on his head, meaning, what is shiryain? What is armor? Like he says in Tanya, this is in Tanya, Miskasim Rabim. It's made up of many little metal pieces. Many scales, I think they're called. This is what the Gemara says. The Gemara says, why is tzedakah? Why does the pasuk say tzedakah is like armor? It's like armor is composed of many little pieces of metal put together in a way that it protects you. So when you give pruta, when you give penny by penny, it actually creates like armor. It becomes a whole thing of armor.
The dollar doesn't cut.
Dollar cuts it better. $100 cuts it even better.
Isn't the point though that it would have to be $100 every day? Each
No, every hour.
But the more times you give, the more links or whatever you get in your armor, right?
According to halacha, it's better to give less more often than one time big deal.
Yeah.
But the best way of accomplishing, but from one side it's better to give a lot at one time. So therefore, I strongly suggest you do both. You give a lot very often, and even more once in a while.
Where it's stationary, the armor is solid, so it's $100. But when it's flexible, you need the little pieces.
Yeah, okay, good point. Becomes a protection, and then that evil shouldn't have its nourishment from Kedusha. So actually, tzedakah protects the person, the Alter Rebbe is explaining, from any allowing Kedusha to give chayus and power to evil. And that's what it says, Kaveh Yeshua Bereshi. Kaveh Yeshua Bereshi, the head of salvation, the hat of salvation is in his head. Okay, so the Pearl Alter Rebbe said like this. The three Avedis in the Beis HaMikdash of Karbanis, Menorah, and Ketores represents the three Avedis in the practical level of Karbanis is davening, which is the elevation of the person elevating themselves to become more refined. Like we said, tanning the hide, becoming more refined. Then you have the level of Torah, which shines from above and sheds light everywhere. That's Momayla Lamata. And then you have the level of tzedakah or mitzvahs, which tzedakah is the general mitzvah, that the level of mitzvahs that creates the reach nechayach, because then that's the ketores. You're taking inanimate object that has no food value, so to speak, and you elevate that to kedusha. And as we explained in the other times that I've explained, that why is ketores even greater? Because ketores had the chelbana, one of the spices was chelbana, and it stunk, and nevertheless it was transformed to ketores in the Beis HaMikdash, in the Mishkan. And the Gemara said, we said every day in davening, if there are 11 spices, if the person, somebody only brought 10 instead of 11. It means if somebody left out the chelbana that stunk, they left it out from the ketores, there would be chayiv misa, punishment from death from heaven. And that shows the concept of, as the Gemara says, any davening that doesn't have a sinner included in it, or any fast day that doesn't have a sinner included in it, is not acceptable, because Hashem wants to show that every Jew, no matter who they are, is part of the fold, part of the nation. And they're, like the Rebbe explained many times, the Medrash says, if by Matan Torah would have been 600,000 minus 1, Chas v'sholom, the Torah wouldn't have been given to the Jews. And the Rebbe explains, even 1 means the guy that walked out of Mitzrayim with the pesel Micha, with the idol of Micha that eventually made the Egel, or whatever, yeah? If that guy would have been missing a Matan Torah, Hashem wouldn't have given the Torah. The guy's a sinner, he's an idol worshiper, who needs him? The answer is no, every single Jew is important. And that's the level of the Torah, transformation actually of the physical world, because Torah doesn't transform the physical world so much. Even davening works on the nefesh habamis a little bit, but the world at large is not elevated by davening or learning. Yeah, it says in Chassidus, if you learn about cows, if you learn about animals, this, yeah, in a certain extent you elevate the animal that you're learning about. But it doesn't come to taking an animal and shechting it and eating it, as a mitzvah, so on, then you're mamish elevating the physical world.
All these years I thought the world was elevated because of my prayers.
Yeah, it is. Your world is elevated, yes. Davening elevates the world, on the contrary. I'm saying not the physical as much of the physical. The world at large is elevated to everybody's davening. Torah is you're bringing godliness down into the world. Okay, so he says now, to explain all this in his siksiv, it says, the crown is the beauty of age. But that in a way of tzedakah will be found. Shemabchin is tzedakah from the level of tzedakah, nasa teres teferes seva, which is a level what's called hadras panim, the good continence, yor Hashem panim, in the level of pnimius, pchinas talum is lev, upnimius alev, the concealed parts of the heart, the essence of that meaning of the neshama. In a way of two friends which are inseparable. The ultimate goal of a Jew, and that's what the Rebbe spoke many times, even Hakel, is to gather different Jews together into one. We mentioned this many times. Within a person, there's also many different facets. Yeah? The head is in one direction, the heart is another direction, the action is another direction. What's the union of Hakel? To gather the mind and the head, so to speak, that they're on the same page. You bring them all united. That means that the brain, Al Rebbe is saying here, that the brain and the heart become two inseparable friends. Because normally the mind says, okay, this is what's right to do. The heart says, do something wrong anyway. So we're on 2 pages, right? So what happened, what's the union of this unity? That to unite the mind and the heart, that whatever the mind understands is right, the heart wants.
And it needs, there are different realms. One is intellectual, one is emotional.
Yeah, and the purpose is that they combine together. That the emotions want what the intellect wants. That's the whole function of a human being.
With the same fervor that in the past, the heart wanted to do what it wanted to do, right?
Normally, the heart wants to do what it wants to do, and the head wants to do what it wants to do. And therefore, that's called, in therapeutic language, I know what you call it, but the conflict within the person.
You have a nefesh haramis and leftis for that is also.
Yeah, so what's the ultimate goal? To get the nefesh habamis, have bittul to Hashem. That the nefesh habamis should also want what the nefesh sholakis wants. Which, by the way, in simple English means the mind where the nefesh sholakis primarily is, and the heart where the nefesh habamis is, that there should be inseparable friends. That what the mind wants, the heart wants.
What the mind wants is what is right, and what the heart wants is what he fancies.
Yeah, but if you fancy what's right, then the heart becomes on the same page as the mind. Well, that's more of Midas and Malchus. Here we're talking about Seichel and Midas joining, becoming one. He says, Ki chitzeni salev, because the external level of the heart that wants all the desires, and misachedes amamer shamer shebereishei lahaskol is beinim gdula sensav baruch. Okay, so the mind wants to meditate into the greatness of Hashem. And then you have the half of Bikein, Chitzeni Salev Eina B'Shusei. The heart wants what it wants. The whole uniqueness of a human being, by the way, the whole uniqueness of a human being is that the mind controls the heart. The Gemara says, and the Alter Rebbe explains this in Tanya, at the end of Perek Yud Aleph, the Alter Rebbe explains that a Rasha is Heim b'shus libam. A tzaddik is the lev b'shusam. The heart is under their jurisdiction. So even though the heart wants it, they say, no, I'm not doing it. 1 second. But by Rishoyim, they're, so to speak, and this, to paraphrase it, they're Rishom addicted to evil. They have no control over their heart. They are in possession, jurisdiction, and control of the heart. The heart wants something, the mind has no say in the matter. There's basically, in simple English, called an animal. That's governed by instinct. There's no intellect controlling what yes and what's right or wrong. And that's a person that's basically on the level of an animal. But even then, the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya, he alludes to in Tanya, that if the good is a level of makif, even that, shchinta sharia. Akol bayasar shchinta sharia. That means even a Jew that's so far out, that he's so addicted to evil that he has no say, he has no control, evil controls him, even that person could do tshuva. Because the pinta liyid, the yechidah shebenefesh, is never affected by that.
And the fact that they're fighting
is good.
Is good. Esau.
You know, again, siblings that fight as kids, well, let's leave that out. Siblings that fight as kids, when they grow older, become very close. Kids are apathetic to one another. They don't care about each other. That's much worse. Because when you fight with somebody, at least there's a connection. And that connection could be transformed from fighting to peace. But if you don't care about anybody, I said this many times, years ago in the 60s, for those of us that were around in those years.
We don't remember that.
Huh?
We weren't born then.
I just said the babies in the show weren't born yet. But us old guys, the 60s was the attitude, especially in the campuses. You said day, I say night. You say night, I say day. It doesn't matter. Whatever you say, I say the opposite. 1 second. So therefore, when you went on campus with a tefillin booth or tefillin table, they came over to you to fight you. There was a connection. I have to fight them. So once they come over to you to fight them, then you can get them to put on tefillin. In the 80s, for those of you that were born later, the 80s was total apathy of everything. Now it's not anymore, but in the 80s it was total apathy. You had a tefillin table, nobody could care less if you dropped dead, or you didn't drop dead, they just walk by and they don't care. Then you have no relation. You have no relationship with them. If there's no relationship, you have no connection. So being anti-Yiddishkeit, in a certain respect, is a mila over apathy to Yiddishkeit. Because if you're fighting it, at least you have a connection. A negative connection can be transformed to a positive connection. But no connection can be transformed to anything. Because there is no connection. What are you transforming? And this is what the Alter Rebbe is saying over here. As long as there's a fight between the mind and the heart, you know the person's alive. Now then they become a tzaddik, then they become a level of a tzaddik, so then obviously the person is complete, the whole person is kedusha. But even then they have their battles between good and better.
And when something happened to heart, is because there's some correction has to be made.
In the heart? Yeah. If the mind meditates, there's the whole, all over the place, you name it, it's all over Chassidus. When the Alter Rebbe talks about in Tan Yosef, when the mind meditates in the greatness of Hashem, and the mind wants it, and somehow the heart doesn't get turned on. Normally intellect stimulates emotions, but sometimes you can have an intellect and the emotions are not stimulated. Why is that? By nature it does. So therefore in the Chassidic language it's called Timtum Alev, Timtum Amayach. Verstoppt the heart, verstoppt the Kopf. Verstoppt means blocked. Sometimes there's a blockage that doesn't allow the intellectual stimulation to stimulate the heart. That's why you have V'siresi Leva Evan Mikibachem, the pasuk, I will remove the stone heart from you. Stone, when you put water on a rock, it just falls off. It doesn't penetrate. Sometimes you can have intellectual stimulation, but the heart is so verstoppt and blocked. You need rotor, or I don't want to get in personal to which plumber, but you to get into and unclog the thing, or remove the orla of the heart, or Chassidus says sometimes you have between the head and the heart is the narrowness of the neck. It's called Meitzet Hagarin in Gemara. The narrowness of the heart, of the throat, which blocks the intellect from going to the heart. And that's why Meitzet Hagarin comes from the word Mitzrayim. And therefore, the back of the neck, when you say the Jews are stubborn-necked people, it's Am Kshei Oiref. Ha'oiref, the back of the neck, is the same letters as Parei. That means there's a klip of Mitzrayim that doesn't allow, Parei, Mitzrayim, doesn't allow the stimulation of the head to affect the heart. So then the Rebbe says, yes, when Chassidus go to mikveh, there's a lot of things that Rebbe writes in different Maamar what needs to be done. But basically what you need to do is uncover the blockage of the heart, the stone of the heart, and remove it. And then the intellect stimulates the emotions. But by nature, the mind stimulates the emotions to the extent that the mind and the heart are on the same page. The same thing you have, by the way, in life. The women like to say the man is the mind and the women are the neck, which way it goes. But the men are the mayach, the intellect, and the women are the heart. You need both, but they're different functions. There's the function of the male, the function of the female. The biggest problem today is the women want to do what the men want to do, the men want to do what the women want to do, and therefore the head wants to become the heart, and the heart wants to become a head, and obviously you can't live like that. The mind got to function, and the heart got to function. Now, in order to have a healthy body, the mind and the heart have to be on the same page. In a healthy marriage and raising kids, you need to have the mind and the heart, the husband and the wife, on the same page. Because they're in different pages, like the heart is one place, the mind is in a different place, then you're all messed up.
Aren't we told that at the time of Mashiach, a woman would be higher than...
Correct.
So the heart would be higher than the mind?
In that respect, yeah. Yeah.
So that's against the first lesson of Chassidus. Mind has to control the heart.
What happens though when the heart is transformed to only one kedusha? So the mind doesn't have to control the heart.
That's impossible because the heart desires. Heart's function is desire.
There's a pasuk, one second. There's a pasuk, we learned this in the past. There's a pasuk that says, Rav Tvois v'koyach shor. Simple meaning of the pasuk is, you want to get a lot of grain plowed, you use an ox, not a person. Rav Tvois, if you want abundance of grain, it's b'koyach shor. It's the koyach of an ox, not a human. Okay? So Chassidus basically asks, I need a pasuk to tell me. I mean, every yukol person in the world knows that an ox is stronger than a person. You want to plow a field, you don't use a person, you use an ox. So Chassidus explains that's not what it means. There's Rav Tvois b'koyach shor means, shor, the behema, represents the nefesh habamis. Adam represents the nefesh ulekis. What does it mean, Rav Tvois b'koyach shor? You get a lot of grain from the nefesh habamis, means as follows. A person is intellect, the animal is emotions. Now, by a person we also have emotions. But the emotions of a person are not as strong as the emotions of an animal. Why? Because the intellect cools down the emotions. That's why when somebody's all excited, all emotion, you say, cool it. When do you cool it? You don't put ice cubes on it. Tell the mind to calm down. Because the mind, automatically by a human, cools down emotions. So therefore, emotions of an animal, midas of an animal, are much, much stronger than the midas of a person. Therefore, the midas of the nefesh habamis are stronger than the midas of the person, which means ava, let's say, love and fear, let's take those two, yeah? Love and fear of an animal is much more powerful than love and fear of a person, because if I love you, but my mind says, yeah, but I love you very much, but I come first. So it cools down the midah of love and fear. An animal, because they don't have seichel, they have instinct, but they don't have seichel, they don't have rationale, so their midah is very powerful. Now, coming back to the nefesh habamis, the problem is the midah of the nefesh habamis, ava of the nefesh habamis, which is stronger than the nefesh ulekis, wants the wrong things. It wants world, taivas, right? Gashmias. So, but the midah, the actual feeling of love is stronger by an animal than it is by a person. So the feelings of the nefesh, the love of the nefesh habamis is stronger than nefesh ulekis. The problem is nefesh habamis loves the wrong things. But if you transform that love, that midah of love of the nefesh habamis, that the nefesh habamis should love kedusha, that love is much stronger than the nefesh ulekis's love. Correct? So therefore, when you transform the Nefesh Habamis to love Elokus, it's not two instead of one. Like this, it's only Nefesh Elokus. Now it's Nefesh Elokus and Nefesh Habamis. It's not true. Rav Tvuz B'Kerech Shor, the pasuk is saying, if you want to get a lot of Tvu, a lot of grain, meaning a lot of Ava and Yira, it's when you have the Kerech of the Nefesh Habamis. So therefore, la'asud love it, when the Nefesh Habamis is going to be transformed to Kedusha, you don't need the mind to control the heart. On the contrary, the heart is going to have a stronger meter than Nefesh Elokus will be. Until then, though, Nefesh Habamis wants what it wants, not Kedusha.
So if you don't have sechel, how is more?
That's why Kabbalah's oil, people that have Kabbalah's oil, rather than intellectuals, are infinitely greater level. Because Seichel is limited. Kabbalah's oil, doing what's right, is not limited. Therefore, Mayim, Simchas Beis HaShe'eva versus pouring wine, and all these, that everything Chassidus talks about.
That Shabbat is not going to fade away if somebody doesn't have the doesn't study.
The ultimate is that Das Seichel has Kabbalah's oil. Shlomo Melech says, we'll finish with this. Shlomo Melech says, Pesi Yamin Chol Davar. There's a pasuk. Shlomo Melech says, a fool believes everything. There's an English expression, a fool believes it. It's a pasuk. Shlomo Melech says, Pesi Yamin Chol Davar. So the Medrash says, who is that referring to? Zeh Moshe Rabbeinu. So the Medrash says. Who is the fool that believes everything the Medrash says? Zeh Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu is Chochma Vatzilas. Chochma Vatzilas. Avram Yitzchak and Yaakov Chesed Gvur Teferes of Vatzilas. Yeah, the Midas of Vatzilas. Moshe Rabbeinu is the Seichel of Vatzilas. And he is the fool that believes everything. The answer is, the ultimate Kabbalah sale is when Seichel puts its Seichel to the side and does Kabbalah sale. That a fool believes, a fool believes. The uniqueness is that the intellectual, super intellectual, puts, and therefore when you go up, inanimate becomes plant, plant becomes animal, and animal becomes human. What is human, who's the epitome of Seichel? The elevation of a human is when you put your humanity, your Seichel, off at the side and Kabbalah Seichel and go up to Hashem.
This was a good class.
Oh, the other ones were bad?